Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome into my sports astrology show here on Twitter and YouTube. Yeah, I'm still going to call it Twitter. I have found out that as a millennial, I'm a millennial, 88 baby, that a lot of the things that I have called them throughout my entire life have been like stuck in my head. There are concert venues that have since changed name that I will forever call the same concert venue that I went to when I was a kid. I just think it's fun to have a very unfixable mentality when it comes to names. I even have named like people's pets the wrong thing and just they went with it for years and years until finally they stopped me and were like, yeah, the cat's name is not actually Boris, it's Forrest, and we just never corrected you. And I was like, wow, that is my Pisces Mercury to a T. So welcome in it to my sports astrology show where I yap about a lot of things, including all of the quirks about me and all the things that I do in the astrology realm. And it's fun. And we share all sorts of ideas, concepts, narratives. I've been sticking to a narrative that the Chiefs are somewhat untouchable this year, and yet every single week it is taken down to the wire. So, as a Kansas City Chiefs fan, as someone who was born and raised in Kansas City, I feel like I can cover this team through the cosmos, through the commentary of the cosmos, and with you all. So I'm really glad to be here on this Sunday. And I kind of like this Sunday ritual that I've gotten into. You know, it's like talking about astrology first thing on a Sunday morning when I haven't talked to really anyone today. It's like Sundays are my mornings to just do everything about me, which is good because Sundays are ruled by the sun. And when you look at the sun's placement in your chart, you can really see a lot of parts of where you might have developed an entire personality around your sun placement. And, you know, then you get to find out later in life when you find out about your birth chart that you actually have a moon placement, a rising sign that dictates a lot more about your personal image and your look and your first impressions to others. So there's so many things about astrology that make it magical and incredibly special to work with. So if I get to do that first thing on a Sunday morning when I've been spending the majority of my week typing up reports and getting readings done because I've been so busy, it's like this is the break that I get to just geek out about the stars with you guys. And it also happens to be with my favorite sports team, the Kansas City Chiefs. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. And every week that we keep going further and further into this experiment of sorts with sports astrology, I say experiment because, as some of you may know, there are a lot of events lately that people have been predicting. And I say the more people predicting things, the better, because the more that we understand what works for us and like what sticks out in a chart for us, and the more that we develop our practice and the more that we have conversation as astrologers, it is so vital to be able to have discourse and have points where you're like, I agree with this, I don't agree with that. You see what sticks out, you see what actually works. And that's what part of mundane astrology is about. I can see a lot of people getting stuck in what's right and being right with their predictions, and a lot of like arrogance when it comes to the cosmos. And it's like, you can't really do that. And even I get humbled every single day. Like, if you think that I am exempt to any of the things that I'm talking about, then that is a projection that you are making, because I am the most humble of all when it comes to being corrected and being a student of the stars, because it's so important to stay learning as much as you are teaching, preaching, and practicing. So, with that being said, I encourage everyone to find the type of astrology that speaks to them. I simply do not find the accuracy when you're not using the information of the event chart. So when it comes to horary astrology, which is more like asking a question and taking a chart of that moment you ask the question and then applying it to the outcome of what you're asking, it's very murky and confusing for my brain, and it speaks loudly and clearly to other people. I have arrived at the exact same result as somebody using a different method of astrology than me multiple times. It happens constantly, and I think it's fascinating how people can fine tune their views of the stars and arrive at the same conclusions and have the same results. And then also, when you don't have the same results and you don't have the same conclusions, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you make fun of everyone else that got it wrong. If you haven't heard of karma and the things that come out of your mouth being something that you must be very, very sure of being truthful or speaking in nothing but truth. I was commenting and sharing some text about truthful speaking that I found over the last few weeks. And I think it's important to know that we're all guesstimating. The people on ESPN are looking at stats and numbers from previous appearances of these athletes and then deciding what they will do based on their predictions. So if I'm doing predictions of sports from a cosmic perspective, or if I'm looking at a bunch of stats on a sheet and telling you what it's going to happen from a statistical perspective, it's still the same thing. So hating on what I do or hating on what other people do is only going to dig your karmic trench a little bit deeper. So I suggest moving forward, and I say this with a smile and a laugh because it's like, I feel like I was such a combatant personality in my media days and in my former media personality that it's comical to me to watch people fight over the most ridiculous things in the astrology community. But I'm not going to lie. When there is an argument, there's also a huge space for finding a resolution and finding a solution. So there are going to be times where the astrology of a game doesn't really work. And you keep looking at it, and like, I think the biggest shining example of this was the Tyson and Jake Paul fight. I don't think I need to explain what I mean by that. I grew up in a household where pro wrestling was on the TV, and it was super fun to watch. I got really into it as a kid. The Paul brothers, anything they touch is usually with a lot of money, contracts, and scripts involved. So I just wasn't going to put my effort into analyzing something that I felt was scripted from the get-go. That being said, I fully expected Jake to have some humble pie going into this and get beat up by Mike Tyson, because you don't want to believe, as a sports fan and as a fan of the greats, that a kid can ever come along and knock down one of the greatest of all time, regardless of the GOAT's current age. You just don't want to like believe that. I think it's like part of aging. You're like, no, I don't want to accept that my heroes are getting older. And Mike Tyson is not my hero. Don't get me wrong. I simply know that like what it takes to go into those arenas. My other half happens to be a former pro wrestler. My father is in the Rugby Hall of Fame here in Kansas City. And it's like athletes around me everywhere. And I have just grown up with, driven up with, grown up with sports in a way that's like different. I grew up watching a lot of it. I grew up enjoying all types of football, mostly college football. I would watch like almost every game just for the fun of it. And it kept me, occupied. And my Pisces Mercury loved to bet on the games, either with my dad or with my mom, whatever. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And there has been a love of sports, playing sports, very competitive here. My own children are in different sports, and it's so much fun to watch them compete. And it's like I'm cultivating this world where, yes, I was in sports media for a while. Yes, I went into sports radio. It wasn't really my passion. Talking about other people doing things is not really my thing. Even though I have a Gemini moon, you would think that I'd want to know everything going on with everybody at all times and need to know every single intricate detail of social relationships. And yet I feel like that was me when I was a lot younger. And, the older I get, the more I'm like, no, the less I know, the better. Because when you have the gift of looking at the cosmos and looking at it through the lens of astrology, you can see that everything is kind of like connected and working together, and it's cool, but it can be really overwhelming sometimes. So when you're able to take breaks from things, when you're able to incorporate it in a healthy way, when you're able to find something that you love, just yap about it as much as possible. We're in a Gemini moon right now, today, so it's my lunar return. It was yesterday actually, so it's like Happy New Year to me. I woke up with the fire of 1,000 suns again, as per usual. So, getting into the game today, I know that there's going to be, excuse me, I know that there's going to be a time where we're watching the game and we're like, oh my gosh, I think I heard that in Gracey's live stream. I feel almost bad lately that I'm like, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is the rhythm. This is the vibe of everything. The refs are going to do this and the teams are going to do this. But it's fun getting the comments on YouTube where you guys are like, oh my gosh, I was watching the game and what you said was going to happen. And it's like a twist. And I always learn and can fine tune things that I pick up on and call out and predict through every week, week to week. And it's been fun kind of fine tuning this experience with you guys. So thanks for following along. Thanks for the support and sharing the stream whenever you guys see me live. It's been really great to just be able to reach a bunch of people and help them do things. So I didn't do the fight for Friday night just because I'm like, guys, this screams like money deal. And I'm just glad everyone got paid. And Netflix, you have to step your game up if you're going to be streaming the Chiefs on Christmas, because I don't like when there's audio or video difficulties when I'm trying to watch the Chiefs or really anything. Like, I am such an audio and video, I guess snob would be the best way to put it. Like, I have to like listen to certain things at certain levels and it'll irritate my ears. But Pisces Mercury problems, once again. In case you guys didn't know, I have a Pisces Mercury and it can ramble, it can vent, it can tune out, it can dissociate. It has all sorts of skills. But the most likely situation here with my Pisces Mercury is that I will be able to kind of pick up on the energy and the pace of the game through the chart. And that's where we will start today. And that's where we start every week. But just reminding you in case you're new here. And in case you don't live in the Midwest, one, congrats. You probably don't have the allergy problems that we have, but every day it's a new temperature. And it changes like 30 degrees every other day. So, yay, living in the Midwest is so much fun. Today's game is not in the Midwest, though. So, from time to time, I will get things wrong and I will simply think that there's a home game and it's an away game. Or I think it's an away game and it's a home game. And that shows you how much I pay attention to the Chiefs' schedule. I just assume that the information that is in my brain immediately is right. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, it's at home. And it makes no sense. So today's chart is accurate if you are following along and have seen me do the live editing of the charts, or, shows have started late because I'm like, oh shit, what city are we in? Better correct this real quick. It's beautiful because now I have Astro Gold. And Astro Gold on a Mac is basically like having like all the world's answers right in your lap. And it is so exciting. I love their astrocartography program on there. So everything's amazing. And it's been making my readings so much easier. So much easier. So if you haven't seen them, go check out my readings on my website. All the links and stuff are in the YouTube description, which I'm assuming you're watching this on YouTube. Because, yeah, I don't know if anyone's on Twitter anymore. I tweet. I share things, and I know that there's a few people still there because it's like, I technically have been on Twitter since 2009 with my very first account, and that was my sports media / just shit talking sports account. And I yeeted that out of existence in 2022, and it was just no longer needed. That being said, rejoining Twitter as an astrology account has been wild. The astrology community, it's very young and very like restless. And I feel like with Pisces energy, with Pisces, especially Saturn in Pisces and Neptune in Pisces, but around Pisces season, I feel like we're going to be feeling a lot of the changes. We're going to be feeling a lot of the Pluto fully being in Aquarius, and that's going to be for a while, happening on Tuesday. We're going to be starting to feel like a start of a new year actually on January 1st instead of it feeling kind of like the middle of winter. The North Node will be at 0 degrees Aries, South Node at 0 degrees Libra, so that's like a fresh start. And then when we get to the spring equinox, we're going to be seeing a lot of the rebirth and renewal of I don't want to say like highly spiritual information, but I feel like people are going to be shifting into like wanting to know more and go deeper with themselves and with astrology. Who knows? So hang in there, astrologers. You are doing great. Your work is important, whether you've gotten things right or not. Who cares? Just keep going and keep learning. So, with that being said, let's jump into today's game chart. I will get into more about PSAs for the astrology community later, but it's mostly just from like somebody that has barely been around it and barely been in it and has been like, wow, is everyone okay here? The answer is no, but we're getting better. Half the people have left. Those of us who are still on Twitter are hanging in. We're just trying to do our best. And speaking of that, today's game is going to be another insane journey for Chiefs fans and probably their opponent as well, because it is not going to be an easy win on either side, whether you have the Bills winning or the Chiefs winning. Uranus is going to be kicking off the chart after the rising sign, of course, being at 19 degrees Taurus. We can look that up here in my favorite book. And yes, it looks a little ragged, and I'm sorry. I love this copy. It is my favorite copy to work with, but I do recommend going to Linda Hill's website directly, sabiansymbols.com, and checking out her store. And that way you can get a newer copy and not have yours look old and held together by painter's tape. Regardless, today's rising degree is represented in the Sabian symbols by a new continent is rising out of the ocean. This is the karmic degree. The truth degree is wisps of clouds like wings are streaming across the sky. And the solution degree of today's rising is a moving finger points to a significant passages in a book. This is a degree that like you're supposed to open up a book and find a quote from it, and that will be your message for the day. So let's just use this one because this book is also full of quotes around each degree, and you can check out the quotes on the side panel for each degree. So I just opened it up to Virgo 7 degrees, and the first one is the dogma of woman's complete historical subjugation to men must be rated as one of the most fantastic myths ever created by the human mind. Wow. I don't know how that one's going to apply to an NFL game, but we are right here with Mary Richard Beard on that strong quote. This 7 degree Virgo is the degree of represented by a harem. And it's one of my favorite degrees because whenever people have a very strong, like, circle of women in their life, or they're supported by a very strong group of women, or they have possible conflict or unrest when it comes to women, I look for this degree in their chart. And it's usually a very personal placement connected to that, whether it's an aspect or there's actually a placement at 7 degrees Virgo. So just some information. So that's the quote that I guess we're going with for this rising sign. But this is a chance to start a new course. The 19 degree of Taurus is that continent rising out of the ocean. And that's very much like something coming to light as a fresh new arena of opportunity. So this could very much represent Buffalo being like, all right, we've got the Chiefs in our territory. We are going to have a fighting chance against them. They're down a lot of players. They are not exactly in their heyday, but they're undefeated. And this could be very much Buffalo's Super Bowl if they beat the Chiefs. And they very likely could. When you have Uranus on your ascendant, even though Uranus is stationed retrograde there, we are still going to see sudden upheaval and changes with this game no matter what. Another thing to remark about the Taurus rising, thanks for hanging in there during my water break. The Taurus rising happens to be ruled by Venus, right? So Venus is currently in Capricorn at 7 degrees Capricorn. So we go back to our handy dandy book here. And that is A Veiled Prophet Speaks, Seized by the Power of a God. And then Capricorn 8 degrees, which is the truth degree of this placement, is Birds in the House Singing Happily. And then the solution degree of this Venus placement is An Angel Comes Carrying a Harp. So I'm not sure if we're going to see an angel appear carrying a harp or anything, but I do feel like the ninth house of Venus is working in the favor for the away team, since I do see the fourth house as the home team and the ninth house as the away team when I'm looking at these charts. In case you missed it, I make up everything in my own head and process. I have tried reading books about sports astrology, and for the majority that I've read, they are not great. And like, I just don't, it doesn't compute when one's talking about horary astrology and doesn't even look at the chart of the actual game and matchup and even think about casting the team. So I just doesn't make sense to me. So with that being said, I'm like, do your own thing. If this method works for you, cool. If this method doesn't work for you, okay. If this makes no sense to you and you're here watching because you hate what I do, awesome. I hope you're taking notes because it'll probably help. There are so many things in a chart that make, I feel like, this game, especially this game, show up as very powerful. You have a seventh house sun. Seventh house is all about the other and how you show up in the other relationships, close partnerships, contractual partnerships, if you will, business partnerships, and also marriage. I don't think anyone is getting married here at the game today, but seventh house sun game in Scorpio, you never know. There is a lot about the Venus, Sun, Mars, Mercury, Saturn that I'm looking at here, but mostly we're going to be looking at Venus to start off. So that ninth house Venus is pretty loud. I think that it plays into things for the away team, but with the fourth house having Mars in Leo right there, starting off the fourth house, I do see that the home team is going to be loud. They're going to be prideful, and they're going to take pride in dominating the Chiefs at any point they can. So whatever you see today, it's going to be loud from the home team, and the away team is simply going to be resilient and keep showing up. It's very Capricorn energy. Capricorn energy is talked about a lot when we get closer to the holiday season. It can be very isolating. It's that icy winter feeling, but as much as Capricorn is the goat, it is the sea goat. So it's a goat that jumps back off that cliff after they reach their highest highs and radically transforms in the water just to do the climb all over again. So it's very much about transformation and the journey. So when you see Venus in Capricorn, they have high standards because they have high standards for themselves. If they don't like the scenery, they go higher to where, no one can bother them there and it's easier for them to breathe. If they don't want to be in a situation, they can just peace out and leave. They are very good at that. But Capricorns have a sense of, if you're going to be a part of my herd, you better be up to my standards. So this Venus could show the weaknesses of the Chiefs on the road. That could very much be like the isolating part of this, mostly because we're looking at aspects to Venus, and you see that the North Node is squaring Venus, and that can be a little bit challenging when the North Node is in the 12th house. 12th house energy in sports charts usually is the subconscious and can be a little bit like trying to run in molasses feeling. And so that's why I say when you see planets in the 12th house, it's usually a slower approach to that planetary energy. With the North Node in sports so far, I've seen that more as a point of destiny. So I feel like this game is going to be very much mental. The 12th house is ruled by Jupiter, and we look at Jupiter currently stationed retrograde at the diabolical degree of Gemini. 18 degrees in degree theory is represented at, or is known as the diabolical degree. So that's why I call it that. It's just known as being very, very intense. And that's because it's a Virgo ruled degree. If you know anything about Virgo energy, it can be very critical of others and how others show up in their service to the world and their daily routine and their health. Virgos can criticize so much that it gives them a stomach ache, and it's usually criticizing of themselves or overthinking. Or you can tell that I have a lot of experience with Virgos and I love them. I have a South Node in Virgo, so it's like trying to overplan details. And that can be diabolical for some people. It can be paralyzing for some people to have to live in the details so much. So we see Jupiter retrograde at the diabolical degree of Gemini at that 18 degrees in the second house. So a second house ruled by Mercury. I feel like the pace of the game is going to be very swift, very quick. Swift, no pun intended. I have no idea if she's going to be at the game today. Usually with Venus in the ninth house, looks like a yes. I do know that she's been to the Buffalo Stadium before, so it wouldn't be that big of a stretch. Was it the nicest and most inviting? No. But what do you expect of a place that is like freezing and the tundra of the United States? I think that it's cool that we have Jupiter and the moon in the second house today. So it's definitely going to be an emotional game as well. When you see the moon in the second house, it can be like, I don't want to say the moon in the second house can be like only attached to material possessions, but it can definitely be inspired by material possessions. The moon is actually at the degree of 3 fledglings in a nest. So it's almost like only the strong survive, and it's like only the emotionally strong survive. Going into that third house, the mentality is where I think that degree really plays in, because the third house being ruled by the moon is making it look like, if we can just have the mindset and the communication of a team that wins, a team that can get through anything together, whatever team that is that can stay strongest and stay not in control, because I feel like today's game is going to be about attention to detail. Like if you're not paying attention and you're putting your blind faith into having, you've won a bunch of Super Bowls and you have a team that you've beat before, if you're just relying on that, that could get them. That could get the Chiefs. But if the Bills are going into this like, oh well, we got to knock them off their game. We gotta get them off the undefeated path, instead of being like, hey, we got to get this win for us, then the Bills could easily get too preoccupied with dethroning the Chiefs versus focusing on themselves. So I feel like Jupiter will be very loud and telling, with it being in the second house and ruling the 12th house. That is an intercepted 12th house. So that intercepted North Node and intercepted Chiron should not be as loud today. So I think that having that intercepted 12th house is going to be less dramatic for the placements in there. However, having Mars in this 12th house would be a detriment, and that will be relevant later. So moving on, like I said, we covered the 4th house, home team being there, and having the Mars in the 4th house shows that there's going to be a lot of aggression, a lot of passion, a lot of words exchange. The 3 degrees of Leo is represented by a mature or a young woman cutting her hair into a bob to look like a mature woman. I'm pretty sure I can read the description. It's a lot better, I promise. A mature woman keeping up with the times, having her hair bobbed. So it's like somebody that doesn't want to be out of touch with fashion and considered old fashioned. So if somebody shows up with a bob today, that could be interesting. I know that I kind of talked about that with the Super Bowl, because the Super Bowl's rising sign was 2 degrees Leo this past year. And so I was like, if somebody shows up with a bob, that wouldn't surprise me very much. Going into the 5th house, which is ruled by the sun. The sun is in Scorpio in the 7th house. So I feel like transformative creativity from the heart is going to win the game today. So it's like when we have the sun in Scorpio, it's all about where can you take your transformation of the ego, the personality, where can you put others above self. And that's a lot of what seventh house suns do. They love one-on-one time. They're very much one-on-one people. However, in a team situation, you know, it can be challenging. Luckily, Neptune is trine the sun. I say Neptune is trine luckily because I feel like it gives a spiritual element of today. There we go. A spiritual element of today where you can see a little bit of where this can be a breaking point and a breakthrough point. And if the Chiefs pull off this win today, it can be very spiritual for them. If the Buffalo Bills pull off this win today, it can be a very spiritual moment for them because they finally showed out against, not finally, I know that they've beaten the Chiefs before, but like they showed out against the team that was the last undefeated team in the NFL. It can be a very ego boosting moment, which is also very Mars feeling. And since the sun in Scorpio is ruled by Mars and Mars is in Leo, that pridefulness will be even louder for that home team. So I'm excited to see how it goes. I know it's going to be a very intense creative game when we pull up the tri-wheel and you can see everything for yourselves. It's a lot. Going into the sixth house of today's game, it is ruled by the 29 degree of Virgo. So that is going to be ruled by Mercury, with Mercury also in the diabolical degree of Sagittarius. We see this going to be quite physically intense game. I feel like Mercury does represent the poignant energy of a physical test, right? Like Mercury likes the jabs, likes the swiftness, and Virgo definitely likes to take low and cheap jabs sometimes, and they can criticize other people harshly because they feel themselves like they need to criticize themselves harshly. So with that being said, as long as the teams have both eaten well, I feel like they will be the well-rested part definitely helps, but it's like the gut health and brain connection there with Virgo, and then having the South Node and the really it's like a lot of placements like the Vertex today, which is going to be spiritual gifts. I think that Travis Kelce will have a pretty solid game today, and that'll be because the more that the South Node is kind of like leaving him alone with his Libra Sun and Libra Mars, I think that he'll have more of a chance to just really go off. However, we will talk about how these placements affect both Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes because there's a lot of interesting synastry there. So moving on into the seventh house, which we talked about a little bit. Seventh house is ruled by Mars, and that's going to be in the fourth house in the sign of Leo at 3 degrees, which is a Gemini ruled degree. So a lot of yapping, a lot of back and forth. I think it'll be a fun game to watch, and it's like two young quarterbacks that are really talented. So just sit back and enjoy. Then we go into the eighth house, which is ruled by Jupiter, and you see Jupiter once again directly opposite of Mercury. So we have an eighth house Mercury, which in Sagittarius can be very much like running for your life, you know? And I think there's going to be a lot of running, a lot of scrambling, and Mercury today is definitely going to be going into overdrive. With that being said, Mercury opposite of Jupiter retrograde, I think that people that get too much in their head or talk too much shit might have leg problems today. So just be careful. Be careful what you say. And that goes on both sides of the ball. Going into the ninth house ruled by Saturn, we look to see Saturn direct. I need to be careful with my arms because I move my arms a lot, and I freeze my camera because it's a Mac and it does like FaceTime little buttons and reactions. So I'm like trying not to. So Saturn is direct. Tell everyone everything is getting better. I feel like I'm Saturn dominant, so naturally I'm going to be like, yes, Saturn going direct is literally changing my life. It's not that serious. I feel like Saturn stationing direct has been less of feeling like we're going through a karmic time as a collective and more like we are finally feeling like there can be some change and we can take autonomy back. And I think when things feel heaviest, what I love about Pisces energy and mutable energy in general, because Saturn is loosely square Mercury as well as Jupiter, And the more Saturn continues, since it's not retrograde anymore, it's going to form a tighter square with Jupiter. So that'll be interesting because Jupiter will still be retrograde. And the more that like the mutable energy I'm around and the more mutable energy I work with, because I've been doing a lot of client readings for mutable energy lately. And mutable energy, in case you don't know, is Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. So mutable signs know how to laugh so much. Even Virgos, they have a very dark sense of humor. They're very dark sense of humor. And the more that you laugh and the more that you can find joy in the nonsense and find joy in the chaos around you, you're going to be thriving. I did the hands thing again. Okay. I don't want to have technical difficulties. So I'm going to keep my hands down. That's really hard for a Gemini moon to not talk with their hands. But hey, going into that Saturn ruled ninth house, though, that Saturn being direct is going to make a big difference. Maybe the Chiefs finally feel like they're firing on all cylinders, yet having the lacking of I guess, I don't want to say credible kicker, but their usual kicker that has bailed them out of many, many things this year, with Harrison Butker being gone and injured for a few games. I know that I have to look up his chart for sure, but I feel like that could have been easily the injury in the Capricorn rising from last week's game. So it's like sometimes my results and my predictions have like days that they take to show up, but they still show up. We also had an injury with Juan and Morris, I believe, on the last game too. So I know that there's like multiple injuries last week, but I'm just glad it wasn't Patrick. And yeah, I can say that. Yeah, I'm like, yes, I'm glad it wasn't Patrick, but I'm glad that everyone is okay and it's something that they can come back and join the fun of the Chiefs when they're all healed. And once again, I'm throwing my hands up, so I'm gonna stop doing that. Anyways, going back into the 10th house, we covered the ninth house. There's the Venus there, and we talked a lot about what that's going to be like for the away team. And since today's game is ruled by Venus, having Venus in the ninth house is a booster for them, but it's still going to be a very difficult game. Having the midhaven at 27 degrees Capricorn, that is ruled by Saturn as well. So Saturn being direct is great for the 10th house as well. That is more of the public image of the game. That's more of like the public figures that could be at the game. Having Pluto there in the 10th house, that 29-degree Pluto, we are almost done with Pluto in Capricorn. I don't know if we just need to take a minute for that and all celebrate, but for those of you with late degree cardinal placements or late degree Capricorn placements, throw yourself a party on Tuesday night, like just around 7:30 Central, just crack open some champagne and be like, we fucking did it. We got through it and we survived. I have placements at 0 degrees Capricorn up to 19 degrees Capricorn. There's like 4 or 5 placements there. Depending if you count the descendant, and I do. There's so much to be said about getting through Pluto transits, and even though Pluto in Aquarius is not going to be any easier, Pluto shifting to an air sign is going to feel a lot less heavy for a lot of people, and I'm looking forward to it. So Pluto being in the 10th house for today's game, Pluto in sports astrology is not necessarily something that I look at for anything other than where the game will feel transformative. So if the game is transformative in the public eye, there very easily could be a rule that gets changed from this. I mean, Buffalo and Kansas City have a history of having rule changing games. So this could very easily be something like that. Having Pluto on the MC like that means that your public image is constantly transforming, constantly changing, and especially knowing that with Saturn and Pisces, Pisces is all about that flow. So we'll see what that brings to the 10th house, and then going into the 11th house. The 11th house starts at a degree that I am familiar with, that is a bear on its hind legs waving its paw like it's circus trained bear. And it's very much about performing and performativeness. And the 11th house is all about community. And I look at it as like fan bases, teams, that kind of thing. Having Saturn and Neptune there. Saturn is the one that is keeping things regulated, and Neptune is the one that is breaking up the fog, smoke, or kind of illusionary aspects of, you know, Neptune retrograde is doing a great job at revealing people for their true colors and for who they really are. I don't really think that's going to be applying much outside of the aspects it's making to more personal planets, like Neptune making aspects to the sun in Scorpio, that 26-degree sun, and trine the 27-degree Neptune retrograde. And it'll be interesting to see when Mars retrograde begins and Mars goes back into Cancer, seeing how Neptune will be getting closer and closer to dipping into Aries in March 2025. I'm just like excited to see how it all goes. But with that being said, I feel like today's game is going to feel like a lesson to one team, and a spiritual one at that. So seeing that it could be with Pisces being in the 11th house and Jupiter ruling Pisces, you look at Jupiter being in Gemini and it's like the hands. So it could be a lesson through the hands, a dropped pass, a dropped catch, something that like really teaches a harsh existential lesson for one team or the other. Which team will that be? We'll get to that later. And something happens on that line. So going into the 12th house, we kind of covered that being ruled by Jupiter and that being a little bit more murky mentally today. So I do think it's going to be more of a mental thing. The mentally tough team, the team that doesn't stress out, the team that doesn't act out like from the ego and doesn't boast a lot and get in people's faces, and especially early celebrations. I don't know how many times people haven't learned their lesson with celebrating early in the end zone, acting like you guys won the game. And it's like, I know playing a team that has won back-to-back Super Bowls and has been all over the headlines due to famous relationships and infamous situations off the field and people coming back and getting redemption years with Kareem Hunt. We have just been in the headlines. It's annoying. Sometimes when you're a diehard sports fan and your team isn't doing well and a team that you have hated over the years starts doing well, it can be very, very triggering. And some people take this very seriously. Some people are like, this is everything for them. So you got to be just aware of all the different levels of opinions. I used to troll the hell out of Buffalo Bills fans. Like, there's this one Bills fan that had eyebrows that looked like parentheses, and I may or may not have called her Captain Crybrows. And was that the nicest thing of me? No. Was she insulting my appearance first? Of course. That was my media thing. I always fired back at people very harshly. Buffalo fans are very creative with their insults. Let's just put it that way. And there's a lot of bantering and back and forth. I do feel like it's going to be a heated game today, so we'll just see what happens. I think that the fans are going to be a loud part of today's game, though, for sure. So with that being said, let's look at Buffalo's chart, okay? I'll wait if you guys want to look at this for a minute. I'm super excited because this chart is one of the like charts that I'm using where it's like still the ownership chart. And if you guys haven't been following along, I am modifying my system to where I'm going to be using the first home game in the current stadium as the team charts moving forward. These charts where it's like the team was founded or the team was allowed permission to go to a city, whatever it was, these are kind of like the ownership charts. And as much as I want to say that these charts are helpful and relevant, I'm also curious, like, if I can do all of them next year and be like, okay, so this is the team, the first game in the first home stadium. But for now, I am using the date founded by charts, and we'll see once again how accurate they are. I'm in my own little experiment. Every single week, I get to pick and see what I'm going to take with me from the week before, what I'm going to leave behind. And with this chart, I think we can say that very fitting to have Buffalo as a Scorpio sun, I feel like they're very restless. Very much whenever you bring up Super Bowls, they can be very testy about that. And especially because that Sun and Mars conjunction, they are very, very, very physical. Scorpio Mars are also my favorite placement for athletes. So having a Scorpio Mars conjunct your Sun, it's a very powerful placement. So what we're seeing today with the Buffalo Bills, we're looking at the Sun and Mars simply because it's right next to each other. And for this team, a lot of their physical aggression will be in the sixth house, and a lot of their focus will be in the sixth house of dominating the team physically. So the Chiefs have had a lot of injuries. They are on a lot of backups of backups of backups. So to put it mildly, they could be completely beaten up today. And it could be very easily a dominant game with the Bills. So while it is difficult to say how I can predict this game without fully going through it with you guys, I do see a strong contention for this game to be head and head, the whole head and neck, head and head the whole time, whatever, neck to neck. There's so many references that you can give here. And it's kind of funny when you see Scorpio, Sun, and Mars, because the Sun is ruled by Mars. So having that is like supercharged in the sixth house. So it either could be reckless activity where injuries are more possible simply because of all the aggression and drive in the sixth house, or we could see more or less their Mercury being over there in Scorpio as well in the seventh house at 27 degrees Scorpio. That'll be conjunct the Sun. That's also like having fire under your feet. You run like hell. You are way more motivated. You have like a fire in your loins. Scorpio does roll over the groin area, to put it as PG as possible. I don't know if saying genitals is PG, but whatever. 27 degree Mercury and Scorpio being ruled by that Mars, and that Mars being in Scorpio. It's a fun chart. I think that the Bills definitely represent this at times with their vengeful like playing and the way that they can dominate their opponent. So I can see how this chart is applicable if we are using it for today's game, which is good. If I can't relate to a chart or anything, I usually go with the updated version of the chart, which is that first home game in the current stadium for the team. And that way you can actually have a rising and MC and vertex, because that is a game that you can usually like find the starting time too. I found games from the 1940s, so if you need help, I got you. As far as needing help for the Buffalo Bills, they have quite a bit of help there with the Jupiter in Sagittarius right there in the seventh house. So they are going to have a big boost when it comes to head-to-head competition. A lot of the things that we talked about with needing to be creative today, one of the teams the teams needing to be creative in general in order to get this win. Pluto, Venus, and the moon all right there in the fifth house of creativity, gambling, referees, and everything. This could be a very emotional game for the Bills if the referees are heinous, with nothing in the fifth house but the fifth house ruled by a Scorpio sun. That to me indicates like little stingers of penalties almost. So it's like little like barbs that they give out, and it's like they might be a little bit not all over the place, but the refs might be a little bit broody today or moody or seem to pick sides. So watching out for the Bills, seeing that their Venus and Virgo, their Virgo and Venus, their Venus and Virgo conjunct the moon there. Since this is a noon chart, the moon is not exactly accurate. And since this is not like the first game chart like I talked about, that's the other beauty of having that first game chart. That's where I think that I'll go. Maybe with the next broadcast, who knows? I'm kind of tired of explaining the difference, but I want to make sure that I'm using all the accurate systems. But going into that sun-ruled fifth house, yeah, you're going to need to have transformative creativity here. And since they have all that Virgo energy, their physical body is once again brought up because sixth house is ruled by Virgo, and that represents physical health and wellness. Yeah, so going into the eighth house for the Bills, having that ruled by Jupiter, and that is going to be once again in Gemini station retrograde in the second house. So having that diabolical Jupiter retrograde ruling the eighth house, I think the odds today are going to be all over the place. I think it's going to be really hard to gamble. It's just going to be belligerently like chaos for gambling today. Let's see what that 16 degree of Sagittarius is, because it's also the part of fortune for today. That is seagulls fly around a ship looking for food. This is the like starving degree. And it's like very much like starving artist energy. So it could be they're just like ravenous, or they are really looking for a win. And it's like that could be what the Bills or the Chiefs feel. So that 16 degree part of fortune in Sagittarius could easily show how much of the one side or the other is actually wanting to win this game. And, you know, sometimes you just got to get by in these away games for the Chiefs. If they're, you know, focusing on the playoffs, they could be like, okay, we're got to get through this game. And they're not going to put a huge effort forward. But it's like you have a competitor like Patrick Mahomes. They're probably going to put their best effort forward. They're not just going to dial this one in. So it will be a competitive game no matter what. For the Bills, having Saturn at that power degree in the eighth house, that is one thing that I think could either be a lesson or could be like a huge booster, because that is conjunct Venus, the ruler of today's chart, with that 19 degree Taurus rising. And Taurus is ruled by Venus, and so is Libra, in case you guys are brand new. I give so many props to people that are brand new that would be following along with this live stream, because it is difficult. My creative consultant was even like, have you considered maybe trying to explain any of the things that you're talking about? And I'm like, I try my best, but it's best when I just like say all the things and people can piece together what works for them and what doesn't. And if you go back and watch my first NFL kickoff for this year, I kind of go through my process in a very slow pace. I think that broadcast was like 3 hours. So yeah, it was very slow. But seeing the Bill Saturn there in the eighth house and it conjunct the chart ruler by about 5 degree orb, you're going to see building blocks or a strong foundation for the Bills. They definitely have a good pace and rhythm for today's game. It's going to feel a lot more like they have like the ability to climb out of things. But overall, Venus could very easily teach them a lesson. You never know. So going into the ninth house, which is ruled by Saturn, they have that, that both teams have that Saturn in Pisces for today's game in the 11th house. So I feel like this is going to show how the team matches up and how they go head to head with the Chiefs. And like, if today will be really informative, there we go, for me, just because it's like where I see my predictions and where I base things off of could really influence like my process for the next, I don't know. Like I said, I'm learning as I go. And that's like the beauty of all of this, is that if you can take anything from this is apply your own process, because what works for you and like what speaks to your brain is going to be different. And if you want to learn more about your process, look to your Mercury sign. Well, if you missed it earlier, I was mentioning how my Mercury is in Pisces. And so cannabis is what some people would still classify as a drug. It is a plant-based medicine, which I feel like falls into the 12th house, with Pisces ruling the 12th house and my Mercury being in Pisces in the 9th house. Wisdom and higher information is easier for me to process because I feel like I'm just like connected to some other realm most of the time with my Mercury in Pisces. And a lot of people that have water Mercuries feel like that too. I know I'm not alone there. And part of like the grounding and the earthing process is coming back to that and not getting too far ahead. So sometimes you'll see me and I'll be like stumbling over words, and then I will light up a joint and you're like, wow, that would probably make things worse, right? And it's like, well, no, because for my Mercury, what worked for me will not work for a Leo Mercury. And, you know, it won't work for somebody that has a first house Mercury. So I think it's cool. I think it's cool that astrology can help you like fine tune the parts about yourself you don't even know about yet. So if you're curious to find out what works for you and your astrology method, I love doing charts for other astrologers. So if you have any interest in that and you don't want to book or you're not able to afford it, just DM me and we can talk about something like that, because I love showing people their magic through the Sabian symbols, and I love trade deals too. So anyways, if you have been paying attention this far, congrats. We're still on the Buffalo Bills chart, and we will be getting to the Chiefs here in a minute. Then we'll be doing the tri-wheel and quarterback matchups. So there's plenty to stay for if you want. If you're just stopping by, hi. Please feel free to give this video a like or subscribe to my channel if you don't want to miss the next one, where I might break out a whole new formula. Who knows? I'm an Aries. I do a lot of things in spontaneous activity. So going back into the ninth house for the Bills, there's nothing planet-wise there for them. They have nothing around the MC of today's game. They do have Chiron near the end of the 10th house, and that is Chiron retrograde. That is interesting just because the Chiefs have Saturn there at that very degree. So we'll get to that in the tri-wheel breakdown, which will also be where I do my predictions. We see Aquarius ruling the 11th house. So once again, that's Saturn ruling the 11th house. And when I say Aquarius is ruling the 11th house, it's because I'm showing you guys where I am on the chart. Planets actually rule the houses, not signs, in case you're wondering. Not like I don't know what people are talking about when they say it, but it's like, yes, while it is Aquarius, it is ruled by Saturn. And if you're into the Saturn in the 11th house being about like steady discipline and progress for the teams, awesome. I feel like it's for the Chiefs. They're learning a lesson about having a great kicker and what that's like, and trusting this anonymous kicker is part of their Chiron conjunct Saturn transit. Like it's wild. So I'll be curious to see how this Saturn in the 11th house shows up for the Bills, because it could just show their absolute dominance through discipline. Especially with their Saturn being at that 2 degrees Capricorn. Saturn at 2 degrees Capricorn is something that is very familiar to me. That is my 6th house Capricorn Saturn degree. So yes, and it's exactly square my 2 degree Aries sun. It's a menace, but it's definitely a menace that can get shit done. So if the Bills have any push there, I can definitely see it happening. Looking at the 12th house and just wrapping up the Bills chart analysis, we do see their south node in Aries conjunct the north node in Aries transit wise of today. So this is known as a nodal reversal, and their north node conjunct the south node can feel real icky. And it can kind of just feel like everything is in the upside down, which now that I've seen episodes of Stranger Things, I can reference. That being said, for the Bills having their south node in the 12th house and Aries in general being intercepted, I did say that the interception, especially with Aries placements, makes it less derogatory. So I'm not going to be like, hey guys, they're doomed because of the south node placement. I will say that this could be a lesson in being too familiar, or feeling like just because you're at home you have an advantage, or just because you have the physicality means that you have the advantage. Strategy is important here, and seeing that the 6th house is ruled by Mercury And so is the second house, the pace of the game and the physicalness of the game, with the second house being the pace of the game and the sixth house being the physical of the game, both ruled by Mercury. Mercury being in Sagittarius today, it's going to be all about running for your life. I know I've said that earlier, but it is giving that energy with Mercury and Sagittarius ruling over the legs. I think it's going to be cool to watch these teams go head to head. If you're not a fan of close games and you don't want to watch the game and be stressed out the whole time, then don't watch it. Like, it's just simple as that. You can't escape it. It's going to be a wild one today. Going into the Chiefs chart, this is the Chiefs chart from their founding date, the day that they announced that they were coming to Kansas City from Dallas to Kansas City. For the Chiefs today, their Mercury retrograde is conjunct Uranus retrograde in the first house. This is something they know well, and they are aware of how much can change with Buffalo. I think having your moon and Mercury together anyways, especially when it's Mercury retrograde, can feel like things can be emotional, especially with Uranus there. That's going to be the sudden upheaval, the electric force, but Uranus is retrograde with that Mercury retrograde. So there are going to be feelings of rigid stubbornness, and they will remember what it's like to go up against this challenging team. Their Gemini sun in the first house is going to make this a deeply personal game for the Chiefs. Fun fact, Josh Allen's sun is like right there too. We'll get to that when we look at the quarterbacks next. And so Gemini sun being ruled by Mercury and Sagittarius, this game will have the Chiefs running for their lives as well. Going into the second house ruled by Mercury, we don't see much there for the Chiefs. We don't see anything there for the Chiefs, really. Going into the third house, which is ruled by the moon is in Gemini today. So that third house is very much a house of like, can you withstand this mental storm? Like, are you going to be tough enough to survive this? Are you strong enough? And it's like the mental toughness, and it's not necessarily the physicality that's going to win this game. The Chiefs do have their North Node in the third house for today's game, so the communication and the mindset, and that is like kind of like that boost is there for the Chiefs. However, that being ruled by the moon is at a very personal degree for Patrick Mahomes. So it'll be interesting to see how he wears those emotions today. And I won't say much more just because I'm not going to be the one that shares Patrick Mahomes' birth time first. I will let an autobiography come out. I will let whatever come out with his actual birth time before I share it. I just feel like it's not my place to. For some reason, Josh Allen's is out on the internet, so I'm like, I don't know about that, but that was not my doing. So I do have that put as his birth time for the comparison that we're going to use, though, so that'll be cool. The fourth house, we do see the Chiefs having Pallas there in Leo. That is asteroid of wisdom and knowledge. It's Pallas Athena, so it's like how you show up for the knowledge and how you fight for the wisdom in your life and how you seek the knowledge that you want in this lifetime in your life. So it's a lot of learning based. So this could mean that the Chiefs are learning a lesson from the home team there, especially with Mars in the fourth house, and the fourth house representing the home team with my method. And, you know, it's square the Bills' natal Mars. So there's definitely building blocks that the Bills are going to be using for this game when it comes to Mars, and Mars being the dominant placement when you look at a sporting event chart. I've been talking a lot on Twitter. I like tweet things and I'll randomly be like, no, that's not what I need to say for today. But one of my messages that disappeared from my feed was about like seeing wrong information and just being okay with just letting it go. You got to release the need to be right. And with that, like, it can be hard. It can be really hard. I have a fixed Venus. My moon is in the 11th house, and I like to like be able to see like duality of information and see both sides of everything. And, you know, this has really been forcing me to pick a side and pick a prediction and stick with it. instead of giving people the holistic approach. Because like with my work in degree theory and the sapient symbols, I look at things in a very well-rounded perspective, and so that doesn't really leave like a lot of black and white or one side or the other. It's very much a holistic view. So when I see predictions being like black and white, I'm like, oh man, yeah, I guess that is part of astrology, is that you just have to deal with it. So it's been fun to be wrong out loud. It's been fun to be right out loud. I learn from both, and you have to learn from both, because if you're wrong out loud and afraid to be wrong out loud, then the right out loud parts won't feel as fun. It's like when you get one really wrong and you be like, damn, I can see where I did that. That gives you more of a learning base than being like, I'm right about everything because I stay safe. I don't stay safe. I have to look at this game with a very big lens. And when I look at the fifth house coming up for the Chiefs, I finally have some hope, right? I see Mars and Uranus and Pluto right there as, the loudest ones in that bunch. As far as the part of fortune, ascendant, that as far as that goes, those are not accurate. So honestly, I should take these out before I make them, but I use all these placements in my personal usage of Astro Gold, so I just didn't. So now we have the asteroids in there too, and Ceres and the White Moon Lilith, and then we have Pallas and Vesta, Juno and Vesta. We already talked about Pallas in the fourth house. And I feel like as though the Chiefs are going to be able to warm up the creativity. I do feel like the refs are going to be a little bit flagrant and broody with the sun in Scorpio and the sun ruling the fifth house of today's game. So nevertheless, they have to persist. They must persist. Going into the sixth house, which is ruled by Mercury of today's game, of course, the only thing that the Chiefs have in there is Neptune in Scorpio, and that is trine their Chiron, which is conjunct Saturn, and also loosely trine in a grand water trine their North Node. So very interesting for the Chiefs today. They have an ability to really fix their mindset, heal their mindset, and they could also be learning a swift lesson in feet with that kicker being gone for them. So this could be a healing wound, like, hey, we can draft and pick up any player possible and still make it into the playoffs and still keep our undefeated record, or it's going to be real obvious that they have some missing pieces and they need to regroup, and we might not see them in the later half of the year as strongly as we hoped. This game is a big make or break moment for them, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it pans out. So that 10th house for the Chiefs the 11th house reflecting Saturn across from all those fifth house placements with all that Virgo energy should be interesting to see, since it's not personal like Sun or Mercury, for the Chiefs aspecting Saturn in a negative way and that Chiron in a negative way. I do feel like it won't be as loud for the fifth house. There's not like I said, Sun or Mercury in there. There is Pluto, and Saturn opposite Pluto can definitely feel stressful for the Chiefs. So very interesting for sure. But that sixth house, the Neptune in there, could give them a spiritual lesson through the physical body, but it is Neptune retrograde. So if anything, it might just slow them down a little bit with their physicality. And that'll have to be a spiritual awakening to get their bodies back where they need to be. Who knows? This is the beauty of making your own method and figuring out. Going into the seventh house, the Chiefs do not have any later degree Scorpio placements or early degree Sagittarius. They have nothing up until the ninth house, which is where they have their south node, and that will be conjunct Ceres today in the ninth house. So if they nurtured themselves, if they've taken care of themselves well, they will feel the benefits of travel. They will have to be well rested and actually well rested, and not just we slept on the plane type of rest. So if they are struggling in the later half of the game, we will see why, and it's due to being just worn out, and that's okay. Their Saturn today is in the kill or be killed. Well, it's always at the kill or be killed degree of Aquarius, but their kill or be killed degree Saturn is in the 10th house of today's game. So this could very much be a public lesson. And the 22 degrees in the 10th house indicates to me something of they have to make that magic again. They have to put on a public display of absolute killing it in order to send a message to the rest of the NFL, like get off our back, or to show their humanity. The 22 degree of Aquarius is represented in the Sabian symbols by a rug placed on the floor for children to play on. So it's very much like a renewed sense of security or comfort. It can be like a security blanket degree. It could be a way that you relate and create with others. So that being said, having their Mars opposite Saturn natally in their chart all the time, they could really draw from their anger to make that big public display and really impact their legacy. And that being said, their legacy could also be easily split with today's outcome. Going into the 11th house ruled by Saturn, which transit Saturn is currently in Pisces there at 12 degrees in the 11th house. It is conjunct the Chiefs' Chiron, and we've seen a lot of themes for the Chiefs around feet. Not only has it been like fibula injuries and injuries of the knee, which Saturn and Capricorn rules the knees, but Saturn rules over Capricorn. So that's definitely a thing, as well as Butker's injury, as well as Mahomes's foot injury that happened and scared everybody. And just the redemption story of Kareem Hunt, who was famously known for kicking a woman in a hotel hallway and was caught on camera. He had to leave the Chiefs, and he kind of had a downward spiral there for a while. And he, the Kansas City Chiefs weren't known for having a huge forgiveness policy for a lot of people over the years. Like if you would have asked former players if they were a forgiving organization, it usually sides on the side of no. So the Chiefs having this like redemption curve with Kareem Hunt has been pretty cool to watch. So I feel like that shows up with the Chiron and Pisces conjunct Saturn now that Saturn's direct. Revisiting those kind of things can be very healing. And Chiron and Pisces is definitely a healer of sorts. So knowing that if you go the opposite route with Pisces, it could be a lot of escapism, substance abuse, etc. The healing side of Pisces and the visualization side of Pisces can really create an alternate universe for people. So the Chiefs are rewriting their destiny and their narrative with this Saturn conjunct Chiron going on in their natal chart. So moving on to that 12th house ruled by Jupiter, Jupiter being stationed retrograde in the second house in Gemini. Very much a sign that today's game is going to be all about the details, all about the hand-eye coordination, making sure that your hands are where they're supposed to be. Could be a lot of hand penalties. I don't know. The 12th house is where things kind of slow down and where things can be karmically hidden from you. And it could be something that is a blind spot or something that could be a subconscious trigger point. So with the Chiefs, Jupiter and Aries there, mental wounds or mentally they could easily be triggered by something that happens today with not only the North Node in Aries, but also Chiron and Aries station retrograde conjunct their Jupiter loosely, very loosely. So maybe old mental wounds they have to fight through today, especially with that trine Mars and Leo, the North Node and loosely Jupiter. But yeah, we're seeing their Venus also in the 12th house, which is not great for personal, I would say victory. But with Venus being in the 9th house of the game chart, we'll see how that works out. So yeah, if you guys see anything or want to comment anything, feel free to. I know on YouTube you're able to comment and it's a little bit harder on Twitter. So if you're watching on Twitter, that's one drawback of that. All right, so we're going to go to the quarterback charts and we're going to check out Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and I'm so excited for this. Mostly because it's chaotic. We're looking at the one and only Josh Allen, the young rising star in Buffalo. He's put a lot of things on his back in Buffalo, and he's been an incredible opponent to watch. I never thought, like, I kind of discounted him a little bit when he started out, and over the years, I've been proven very wrong. So I am totally able to say that it's going to be an interesting game between these two. So starting off in the first house of today's game, I'm going to get some water. And some lip gloss. It's my favorite. I don't know if you can see it. I'm a horrible influencer. I know they do that little like Fenty Beauty. There you go. It's fussy. Perfect. Very fitting. But starting in that first house of today's game, we are seeing Josh Allen's Mercury retrograde conjunct the rising of today's game. And earlier I mentioned having Mars in the 12th house being a detriment, okay? I mentioned that for a reason. And even though that Mars in Taurus is very powerful, people with Mars in Taurus are very strong and formidable athletes. They are also very strong, stubborn athletes. So, with Mercury stationed retrograde on the ascendant of today's game for Josh Allen, and that being conjunct Uranus retrograde for today's game, I do believe that Josh Allen is going to be able to show up strong. It's going to be a personal game for him. He's going to feel very much radicalized by this game. His sun is also in the first house, so this is going to be very deeply personal. I know that earlier today I got a question about the game being personal, and it's definitely personal for Josh Allen. And I can see how his son being conjunct the Chiefs' son, the Chiefs in general are just kind of like haunting him. Um, Also, you know, with Patrick's son is at the same degree that the Chiefs' first home game in the current stadium chart, the one that I like reference to as being the one that um, I can use moving forward. And I think I might use it next week and show you guys. But we'll just see how today plays out, because if today plays out where the Chiefs teach the Buffalo Bills a huge lesson and Josh Allen ends up kind of like getting burnt by the Chiefs in general, or they show up really strong and against all odds the Chiefs come out and win the game, that will be really, really telling for if that chart can be like used for the team moving forward. So I'm doing a lot of like research. Like I said, I like to just throw that in there because a lot of people can see me being like, I talk about sports and astrology and like I'm the self-appointed sports astrology expert. I am not. However, I have developed a very solid method and one that works well to my taste and my preference. And if other people like it, cool. If other people don't like it and want to use their own method, cool. We need more people covering this because I personally cannot help every single person into sports betting. And I think if more people could cover the games that I don't, so literally anything but the Chiefs, I cover only Chiefs games. And of course, if clients want me to do like fight charts, I love doing that too. So you can always DM me and be like, hey, I want to pay you to look at this fight. And some people just tip me a percent of what they win when they win. And it's fun. And I have a great time with that. So, it's fun to do that and see how astrology can take you into things, but I don't bet on the games. You guys are more than welcome to, though. Going into, excuse me, the second house ruled by Mercury. We see Mercury in Sagittarius today. And seeing that Josh and Patrick both have placements here in the second house, the pace of the game is going to be fueled by them a lot of the time. Allegedly, this is Josh Allen's correct birth time, so that vertex would be very spot on in the second house. So Patrick has his moon in the second house of today's game, and Josh Allen has his Venus retrograde in Gemini in the second house of today's game, loosely conjunct the moon, and Patrick's moon is loosely conjunct the vertex. I say loosely because that is the noon chart and public chart for Patrick Mahomes. So interesting enough, there's a lot of emotional pull for today's pace, and these two are going to be dictating a lot of it. So Josh Allen also has his moon in Cancer, and if this is once again the proper birth time for him, that 22-degree moon is going to make or break his mental mindset. His mental mindset, it's kind of redundant. His mindset. And his mindset is going to be very much about clear communication, executing plays properly, and defeating the opponent. And with that 22-degree kill or be killed degree of Cancer being his moon degree, that is a very strong degree here. And this is going to be deeply personal and deeply competitive for him. Going into the fourth house, neither of them have any energy here outside of Lilith for Josh Allen. Excuse me. There is way more action in the fifth house, so we're just going to zip up to there. Once again, if this is Josh Allen's proper birth time, his MC would be in the fifth house, so he is going to have to get super creative today as well. And Patrick's MC is not in Virgo. His part of fortune is not in Virgo, but his Pallas, Vesta, and Sun are in Virgo. So that is one thing that I can tell you. So today, Patrick is going to have to fight the urge to tell the refs to go F themselves and to be steadfast and not burn out himself too much in creative plays. If he scrambles a lot, if he does anything like that, his Mercury is currently sextile the transit Mercury. So he is experiencing what most will call like a boost to his physical power. His running is going to be all over the place for sure. He has been running a lot this year, but definitely going to be today as well. His Chiron conjunct Venus in the sixth house in Libra, he easily could feel a lot of the pressure on his lower back and hip area. You know, there's just like a lot of tension for Libras to have to carry the load of everything and the weight of everything. Since he does have a Libra Mercury sextile today's Mercury, I do feel like that's going to be a boost. So he shouldn't have to carry too much of this game on him. His Mars is also square transit Mars. Patrick Mahomes is. And then we see Josh Allen's Chiron in Libra retrograde conjunct his North Node and Pallas in the sixth house, which is loosely, his North Node is conjunct Patrick Mahomes' Mercury, and so is his Pallas. So seeing all that in the sixth house, this is going to be a very balanced physical matchup, I feel like, for Josh Allen and Patrick. However, I do feel like with Patrick Mahomes' Mars in the sixth house, he's going to be more physically aggressive and a more physically loud quarterback today. With that being said, since the sixth house is intercepted, and we mentioned the 12th house being intercepted in that, slowing things down a little bit, his Mars is in Scorpio, and that is kind of on the end of that interception. So it's not like if it was in Libra, it'd be a little bit more compromised. So I do feel like Patrick Mahomes is going to be way more physical this game. Going into the seventh house ruled by Mars, and Mars being in Leo today. So this could be very prideful, from the heart type of competition. Very strong personal matchup, very deep personal matchup. Going into the seventh house, we see both Mahomes and Josh Allen having Pluto. Mahomes, obviously, Pluto in Scorpio. Josh Allen, Pluto in Sagittarius, retrograde. And those line up pretty well to have big transformative games. Pluto is also the co-ruler of Scorpio, so that is something to be said with, I want to say, competition and rivalry. It's definitely loud here, guys. So having An intense rivalry where they're both incredibly talented is a lot better than having an intense rivalry where one is just ass. So it's at least going to be fun to watch, folks. Like, if nothing else, this is not a game to skip because you're worried about it being boring. This is like the game to watch today. This is like the Super Bowl. The mid-season Super Bowl is happening today with the Bills and Chiefs, and all eyes will be on Mahomes and Allen. So that being said, it's going to be very much both of them in the spotlight. Mahomes also has his Jupiter in Sagittarius there at the Scorpio degree in the 7th house, so he could have a little extra luck one-on-one. We'll see. The 8th house being ruled by Jupiter and Jupiter being in the 2nd house directly opposite of Mercury today, it could slow down some things, right? And that being said, having that push from Mercury and the leg power and the running that we talked about, having that being opposite Jupiter, I feel like gives it a little extra boost. So today's game, the odds are going to be all over the place. Will Patrick Mahomes as the underdog show out and ruin all the odds today? Who knows? Jupiter being retrograde in Gemini is a trickster and an absolute menace. So we will not know. We'll just see what happens. And I do have predictions and everything out for the game. So I will be making a prediction. I will have to say, will the Chiefs lose today or will they continue and remain undefeated? Because that's a bold prediction too. Moving into the 9th house, which is represented as the away team, the middle wheel is Josh Allen. And if that birth time is correct, we do see as part of fortune there, loosely conjunct with 3-degree orb Venus for today. That could give him a little bit extra boosted power. His Jupiter being in Capricorn, station retrograde, and 10-degree orb from Neptune. Neptune and Jupiter are a little bit more of outer planets, Jupiter being personal. However, both of the Patrick and Josh Allen's, like Neptune being station retrograde, I think they see through the bullshit that other people might project of the rivalry, or they see through what other people say about each other and they see each other for what it's worth, and they don't have the rose colored glasses with each other. So it might be something that this is not really that big of a mind twist for them if Patrick comes out and just destroys the Bills. Like, no one's going to be surprised. And if Josh Allen comes out and destroys the Chiefs because the Chiefs are at a disadvantage, no one's going to be surprised. But it's very much, they don't play into the hype about each other. They're very much, they see each other as equals. And it's nice to have that respect of your peers, especially one where I think Mahomes is definitely higher up on the scale of talent. Going into the 10th house, which is ruled by Saturn, we see Uranus for Josh Allen there in Aquarius. He could have sudden changes of the game. He could have sudden changes of his legacy with this game. Very much a thing. Calves and ankles are important here. So if he does have any calf or ankle injuries, it could be something that comes up here for Josh Allen. That's just something that Uranus represents, is sudden changes, surprises, and in my study, a lot of it can be injuries as well. So looking at that, opposite Mars makes it louder for that to be an injury for Josh Allen today. Going into the 11th house, ruled by Saturn as well, Saturn being at 12 degrees Pisces. Patrick Mahomes is going through his Saturn return, and his Saturn is 9 degrees away from Saturn today. And I feel as though with all these things going on, and with Patrick having a pretty intense year, having Saturn opposite your sun natally is already a pretty rough aspect to have. It's very much a balancing act in your life. And without going into too much, because I could easily talk for days about Patrick Mahomes' chart, but I won't. Without going into too much, knowing that his Saturn has been teaching quite a bit of lessons with trusting his body and footwork, and showing that he can bounce back from things physically. A lot of people have been commenting on his body as well, which has been wild. Not a lot of men have their body commented on when they are back to back Super Bowl champions for people to be like, ew, why does he have a dad bod? It's like, oh my God. It was kind of like wild to see that. So he's gone through a lot. He's been putting up with a lot of shit and he gives it right back to people. So I think that's cool about him. That's definitely a Saturn opposite sun vibe for sure. Going into the 12th house for Mahomes and Josh Allen, the reason that I believe the Kansas City Chiefs win today, that was a hard one to say, because this game is difficult. This game is a difficult game to call. Josh Allen having his Saturn and Mars in this intercepted 12th house is just, it's hitting. It's hitting for me. With Mars being loosely square, Josh Allen's natal Mars, just because the more that it moves forward in Leo, we will actually see it end up getting to the point where it'll station retrograde and go back into Cancer. So we're not going to see a full exact square of Josh Allen's Mars until I believe like March. Yeah, something like that. Anyways, Mars and Taurus, famously stubborn, famously rigid, but also famously strong and able to get through anything due to their own sheer willpower, right? Saturn in Aries, mental lessons here loud, especially with that North Node. I feel as though Josh Allen is going to be learning some lessons and learning lessons in mental strength and fortitude today. And that's where I will end my quarterback synastry conversation. I feel like the Chiefs are going to be coming out victorious. And we can jump into that chart real quick. I'll give you a couple seconds to look this over and I will have some water. All right. It's what we've all been waiting for, the prediction, the basic summary wrap up. Right around an hour and a half, I like to get things wrapped up and let you guys go because that way you can get ready for the game or go do anything else besides listen to me talk. Although it's lovely and I do enjoy spending hours with you guys here, I do enjoy my own family. All right, with that being said, let's jump into this chart. We have covered the teams, right? We have covered the teams. I do not need to go into the breakdown of what team has what where and why they have that there and their birth chart and all of that. We have talked a lot today about my process, about my method, mostly because we had a lot of astrologers predicting a fight on Friday and like kind of learning about it. So I just like randomly dropped my method and process on Twitter. It was kind of cool. I like sharing the things and hearing what other people do and learning stories about other people and finding out the lore and like why people like sports astrology so much or like how they found my work or all of it. So I am a Gemini moon, I'm a yapper, I'm a Cancer rising, so I'm ruled by my yapping Gemini moon. So I'm always down to talk about methods and any questions you guys have. You can leave them on YouTube. You can leave them on Twitter. You can always at me. I try to be on Twitter to respond to things as much as I can, but it's social media this day and age. I think anytime people find where they like to be on social media and they have a good time with it, that's usually the best place to contact them. And you can see that I'm pretty active on Twitter. You can see when I'm replying and stuff. So I try to be as responsive as I can be, but I don't always get there. So you can feel free to DM me. If it's just requests like, hey, is my team going to win? And there's no like, hey, I sent you a Venmo. Is my team going to win? Can you look at the charts? That's a lot different. You got to lead with some respect this day and age. I am not just doing this for the hell of it. I've been perfecting this method as much as I can because there's always a bigger goal. There's always a bigger goal, whether it's a book, whether it's a series, whether it's a course. You don't know what I'm doing. No one does. Mostly because I'm insane to try and like figure out. Like you will actually go insane if you try to figure out my movements or what I do. I'm ruled by the moon. It's a Gemini moon thing. When you think you've had us, good luck. So today's game, Gemini moon, if you think you can figure it out, good fucking luck. Today's game is going to be heavily dominated by physical back and forth. We are going to see a lot of young talent and a lot of scrambling, a lot of creativity. We're also going to have to see some flagrant calls, some missed steps, some dropped, I think, passes, some funky handwork. I don't know if people aren't going to be able to catch a football today. I don't know if they're just going to be like all over the place, but with the Gemini moon conjunct Jupiter retrograde and Gemini as well being the pace setter of the second house, I do feel like it's going to be interesting to see that, especially with Mercury and Sagittarius ruling that house and kind of setting the pace of a lot of running, a lot of like physicality, and it's not just going to be an easy breezy game, which has kind of been the Chiefs' signature this year. So you could say I'm just saying this because that's what we've seen all year. But moving forward, the head-to-head that we're really going to be seeing is in that fifth house. Not opposing, but like Pluto's conjunct each other in that fifth house. Venus for the Bills in the fifth house, conjunct the moon, and the Chiefs having Mars right there at the beginning of the fifth house. They also have Mars at the degree of a man so caught up in the spiritual, he forgets his physical form. So if they're not in a good physical shape, it will show today for the Chiefs. The Bills can easily take advantage of this by hounding them with just mind warping plays in their defense. The Chiefs defense can't, keep up, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I feel like today the Bills are going to burn themselves out physically, and they're going to just really try to dominate physically, and that's going to cause some injuries today. Their Mars and Sun conjunction in the sixth house is square Mars in the fourth house. So I do think that the boost for the home team is going to be quite loud in the physical realms. And the Chiefs today are going to have to just hold on to their talent, skills, and faith. Because the only thing they have in the sixth house there is Neptune. And Neptune's not exactly one to be pushing movement in a chart for sports astrology. It is there to set tones, vibes. I look at the outers as tones, vibes, energy. So looking at Neptune in the sixth house for the Chiefs, the Bills also have Neptune there, but they also have Mars and their Sun and Vesta and their North Node, as well as Juno there at the end. And the Chiefs have Lilith there. So very interesting. Once again, the asteroids are not something that I have mastered in any way, shape, or form. In sports astrology, it's still a method that I'm just seeing how it works. So going to the seventh house, the head-to-head is mostly with the game in the Bills. So they have their Mercury there, conjunct the Sun. So I do think it's going to be a fast-paced game. They're going to set that pace, like I said, with the second house really setting the pace for, the tone of the game. I think the swiftness of Mercury is going to be loud today, and Mercury being conjunct the Sun for the Bills is going to be a definite boost. So today's Mercury is actually going to be found in the eighth house of the game. So whoever can outrun the other obviously will win. That's kind of like the game of any, or the tale of any sport. Whoever plays better, runs faster, is louder, ends up winning, whatever. But with Mercury in the eighth house at that diabolical degree opposite Jupiter retrograde, it's not always that easy, right? We have Mercury and Sagittarius conjunct the part of fortune for the game. So I do think Sagittarius energy is boosted. Even though Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, having that opposing and retrograde feels like, to me, a grounding energy, especially for Sagittarius Mercury. If you know a Sagittarius Mercury in your life, you may be able to get some sort of compensatory payment of compensatory, what is it? You might get some sort of money payment. There we go. I just won't mix words today. You might be owed some sort of payment for the abuse, physical or verbal, that you've gotten from a Sagittarius Mercury. They are known to throw hands. They are known to throw some incredibly harsh blows. And they can also be incredibly loving and expansive people. So it's like literally whatever Sagittarius chooses to give you, you just got to roll with it that day. You just got to be grateful for the moods that they're in, that they're fun and joyous, because it's like you don't ever want to be on their bad list, we'll put it that way. So today's Mercury is going to be very loud. I am not going to be surprised if there's a lot of like verbal arguments today and just like people in each other's faces. Who knows? In the 8th house there, the Bills do have Saturn at 2 degrees, so that is a powerful boost. So I do think they will still keep the odds in Vegas happy. They just might not be the outright winner. I feel like Saturn in the 8th house, especially at that degree, can be a little bit difficult to deal with. I'll just put it that way. And that's my personal Saturn, so I don't want to be biased. I'm just going to be quiet. Going out to the 9th house, we see the Chiefs having their South Node and the Bills not really having anything there, with Venus there today in Capricorn, and that being the chart ruler of today's game. I'm curious to see how that plays out. I'm curious to see how that aids with the Chiefs, and if it's like a slow and steady wins the race kind of thing, Capricorn energy. We'll see. We'll see. The MC being ruled by Saturn, and then having the Saturn and Chiron matchup in the 10th house of today's game. I do feel like the Chiefs have that upper hand with Saturn conjunct the Chiron retrograde of the Bills. It'll be interesting to see that for sure and how that kind of plays out, because, you know, legacy wise, the Chiefs could very easily get exposed for some weaknesses, but overall, I think the Bills are going to be learning a lesson here today of some sort. The Chiron placement in the 11th house conjunct the Saturn we talked about for the Chiefs. With the Bills, just that white moon, Lilith there, not really something that I'm going to be paying attention to with a sports astrology chart. If this was a synastry between people, definitely. However, it's not. It's between teams in a game. So going into the 12th house, ruled by Jupiter, Jupiter being at that diabolical degree in Gemini, station retrograde. In the 2nd house, we see the Chiefs, Jupiter, as well as Venus. And we talked about the importance of that for Josh Allen's Mars and Saturn. So I do have to acknowledge that this is where things get tricky, and this is where the game is very, very murky. And this, of course, would be where the game is murky, because that's you. I think the 12th house view in general is like very much something that you have to develop personally, because for me, my 12th house being ruled by Mercury, my Mercury being in Pisces, I feel like it's natural for me to be able to be in intense flows of information that might not make sense to anybody else. Sometimes it sounds like I'm speaking a different language when people don't understand astrology. So I try to make it as understandable and consumable as possible. That goes through a lot of filters in my head. I also have a speech impediment. So when I stumble over words, it's usually because my brain works a hell of a lot faster than my mouth does. So when I'm just trying to keep up with myself, that's really all it is. So when you see Jupiter and Venus in a chart for the game today, it makes you say, is this going to be a problem? With the North Node and Chiron also in the 12th house for today's game, I feel like once again, the focus goes back to the mental. Jupiter in Aries, Aries rules the head, very much a mental space. That's where your brain is. It's a literal definition of mental. Knowing that the Chiefs have that, and it's directly kind of in that 12th house, you know, with Aries intercepted, you can't get away from that one. With that being said, I feel like the Chiefs are going to use their childlike ability to have fun with football, be creative with that trine to Mars loosely for that Jupiter. They do have to be more creative and have more fun and be just able to get there first. And that's what the biggest thing is with today's game is whoever is left standing. And I feel like by the end of the game, Josh Allen and his crew will be left a little bit behind. So that being said, going into the predictions for today's game, I do believe the Chiefs will be winning by 1 point. When you hear me say the Chiefs by 1 point, please know it is because the game is so close that is the margin of error for today's game. Like, that is why today's chart reading took a little bit longer. I went a little bit more into detail about things. I really slowed it down and like tried to put it in perspective. I believe that the Chiefs will be winning by 1 point. It's going to be down to the wire. Could even come down to the kicker with that Chiron and Saturn and Pisces sextile the rising for today's game. It could be very, very much down to a kicker. It could be down to the wire. So that's why that 1 point thing is loud. And that 1 point could also be a one score. We never know. The day that I actually get the score correct, I did that for the Super Bowl. What am I talking about? I predicted the Super Bowl, the Chiefs would win by 3 points, and they did. Actually, I did that multiple years. So yeah, I have predicted the score to be accurate before. I do like to use the whoever wins by X amount of points because that's what astrology shows more than the actual final score. So I am choosing to go with this one today with the Chiefs in favor simply because of the things I talked about with Saturn conjunct the Bills Chiron retrograde, and the Mars today for the game is going to be square the Mars and Sun for the Bills. So I believe that they're going to get burnt out very quickly. I feel like they're going to be very physical very quickly and get burnt out quickly. Very key numbers for today's game. Will I be using a calculator to do this? I don't want to admit that out loud, but I might be. So just bear with me, okay? Okay, cool. I'm glad that those numbers were reflecting what I was thinking. I'm not going to tell you my process, okay? I'm kidding. I will tell you all my process one day when I make the course that I'm building. And now you know what I'm doing. I try to pretend that I was all mysterious and you couldn't tell my next moves, but I'm looking forward to all the things that I have to share with you guys that can help with sports astrology and can help get more people talking about this because I want to have more conversations. And I love hosting this show. I love doing the show on my own because I can like really expand and develop my process this way. So thanks for hanging in there with me. So predictions for today. Let's do numbers to watch first. So 19 is going to be loud with that rising sign, of course. And then I'm going to go ahead and say the 19 is where we start, right? But like there's also lower number or smaller numbers. Like the 2 is going to be very loud. I believe the 2 was loud last week, but I believe 2 is going to be, oh, that's funny. Yeah, I guess the Chiefs would win by 1%. That's funny, seeing that polls have been done where the one score, the 1 point that I am predicting could be quite accurate. So back to numbers 19, like I said, I also believe that 38 is going to be loud today. 22 is definitely loud today. 16, 19, 22, 38, and let's say maybe 12. So let's do that again. Let me do those numbers again, right? Like, because reading those back shouldn't be any problem. I said the 2, the 12, the 16, the 19, 22, and 38. Yeah. And just for fun, because I love Chris Jones, let's throw in a 95. I want Chris Jones to have a great game today. That would be really nice. I'm really excited for Chris Jones and just hopefully showing out. Another person that could have an easy big game today is Noah Gray with his moon in Scorpio showing up in the 6th house today. So if he's emotionally charged up for this game, I believe that he could show out too. The signs to watch are going to be Taurus, Leo, Libra, Gemini, Sagittarius, and let's just say Pisces too. Yeah, I like that. Cool. So we got the numbers. We got the signs to watch. I've given you some players to watch. I do think Josh Allen is going to have a strong game. It's going to be very personal for him in the beginning, and then he is just slowly going to fizzle out a little bit. So yeah, the 8. I think the 8 is something that I also want to throw in there too, because I think the 29 on the MC is going to be loud. I'm just adding more shit in here. Sorry guys, but not sorry. 29 on the MC, so Kareem Hunt, he's been carrying the ball like crazy. So I'm not really sure if that's going to be a surprise, but yes, Kareem Hunt's going to be in the conversation again. So yes, I will clip all of this. I will post it on Twitter, so I will be held accountable. The Chiefs winning by 1. And if I believe we could do a fun prop bet. Do you think Taylor Swift is going to be there? Yes or no? I'm going to say yes, with Venus in the 9th house. Exalted, in my opinion. I know Venus is exalted in Pisces, but it's exalted, opulent energy for me when Venus is in Capricorn. It's raise your standards is the energy. So I hope everyone gets to raise their standards for today's game. If you haven't enjoyed this broadcast, I like how I start off with the negative one. I'm like, if you haven't liked this broadcast, kick rocks. If you have enjoyed this broadcast, thank you so much for being here. I'm not going to tell you to kick rocks. Thank you for enjoying it. Thank you for putting up with my Midwestern allergies happening in full force, as always. But it's just like, it's beautiful for me to see like all the different kind of like things happening, even though it's like fall going into winter. We're getting closer to this winter solstice, which I think is going to be really, really powerful and healing this year, as it is every year. But I'm doing Christmas differently this year for my family. We're shifting holidays more to being in my home, which is really exciting for me. I've always wanted to be like the place for holiday fun. So getting my house slowly ready for all of that and decorating. This is like one of my favorite times of year. Oh, that's awesome to know. Number 9. So that 3 that I was getting as far as like numbers to watch from Mama Sees All on YouTube, we have Juju Schuster back. So Juju Smith-Schuster. So if you've been looking for somebody to cheer for too, look for that one, because anytime someone's coming off an injury, and it's like with this team, the Chiefs are going to be looking for a big win today, but I do believe they're going to be winning by 1. I do believe it's going to be a fun game to watch. I believe that the Bills are going to be highly, highly, highly physical today, but it's going to wear themselves out. Josh Allen does have potential for injury. As far as the extras that I was showing you guys, you know, Patrick Mahomes having his son trine the rising as well. You know, Taurus is all about the voice and the vocal and voicing your things and voicing your opinions, voicing how you feel. So I think if anything, if we hear a lot from Patrick Mahomes today, we know why. Josh Allen having that, I'm going to go right back to it. Sorry guys. Josh Allen having his, let's go to, there we go. Josh Allen having Uranus right opposite Mars today in Leo. As long as he plays from the heart, as long as he plays from a place where he is secure in his footwork and grounding, then I feel like he's going to be fine. But watch for those ankle and calf injuries if it's like a calf pull or some sort of like calf strain. Pat's ankle is his Saturn return, okay? It's been like something that the moment I got Patrick Mahomes' chart, I believe it was in 2022, I wanted to know his birth time. So I reached out to his mom and got his birth time. And when I saw that he had that Saturn in Pisces in the sixth house, I'm like, oh man, he's going to be going through a Saturn return. And of course, I already knew that in his chart in general, but seeing it was in the sixth house, his ankle is going to be an ongoing focus, like his ankles and feet. And having a Saturn return in the sixth house has been something that a lot of people don't really understand. But as someone that's gone through a sixth house Saturn return in Capricorn, I didn't know that when somebody told you that you have fractured a part of your foot, I thought fracture just meant like, hey, it's cool. You're good. I didn't realize fracture meant break until I was in my 30s. So there's that. I do have Neptune in the sixth house as well. So there's medical delusion all the time in my life. I could go on for hours about that. But seeing that somebody has a sixth house Saturn, I do know the injuries that took place during my Saturn return. Being an athlete, having a sixth house Saturn return is very, very, very eye-opening. So while I did a full report and a full chart breakdown for Patrick Mahomes and sent it off to his mom, no idea where that went. He could have gotten it, he could have not gotten it, who knows by this point, but it's so cool to be able to just do that. Going into that was really, really fun for me as an astrologer to see all sides of it. So with the right care and with the right energy, which Patrick Mahomes has a sun natally across from Saturn, so it's directly opposing at all times. This Saturn joining up with, or the transit Saturn joining up with his natal Saturn eventually, it'll be February 2025 when it is exact. We are going to be seeing either the like pinnacle of what a joyous Saturn return could look like for Patrick Mahomes, or we're going to be seeing what a Saturn return when you are not taking care of yourself from the ground up and not taking care of your feet, or you're worn out that way. But I do believe that he has some of the best trainers and people in his corner, and it's something for us to learn as astrologers what that can show up as. So if anything, props to his mom for being so open to that, knowing that I'm going to keep that birth time very much to myself. Yes, if you're a very powerful astrologer or very capable astrologer, you could figure out from the things that I've dropped in his chart, like certain placements. So, I think that as public figures, we can learn so much from athletes, and that's why I do what I do. I have a few people on the Chiefs charts. I'm continuing to add to my collection daily. I have no problem reaching out to people and letting them know I'm not Mark Zuckerberg. Their information will not be plastered all over the place. If they do not, say, hey, you can totally do a profile on me, that's fine. It's something that I like to try to give some ethics to in a space where some people like to use exact birth time to do predictions about people's downfalls and kind of put negative karmic words out there about other people. And I like to use what my gifts are for positive solution-based astrology. And so a lot of the times it does seem like I'm being incredibly positive, but it's because I'm Saturn dominant and I could easily look at the dread and the dreary things of life, but I choose not to. So if that is something that you resonate with, please give my channel a follow, subscribe. Be sure to come back on every single game that the Chiefs are playing. That day I will be live. On Christmas is the only day that they are going to be playing that I might have a pre-recorded little 10-minute thing that I air on Christmas morning, whatever. When I started this, I was really excited about the accountability of doing every single Chiefs game and working with my skills as an astrologer and seeing where it goes. And I think it takes a lot of courage in this day and age to put your face and your name out there with your astrology work. And I give props to those each and every day that dare to be wrong, that dare to be right, that dare to put themselves out there as an astrologer in this world that is mostly black and white and logical thinking or, science-based thinking. And it's not something that, I worry too much about when it comes to what I do. I know that I have everything behind me and my integrity and my credibility. So I speak loudly. I speak as clearly as I can. And I try to let others know that it's okay to share your gifts and share your talents in whatever capacity. What's not okay is diminishing others' talents and constantly feeling the need to correct others and feel smug and superior in your astrology practice. That is one quick way to get knocked on your ass. So I look forward to the future of the astrology community shifting to a more collective collaboration based thing where people hold each other accountable and show up as equals and treat each other as equals. It's amazing what can happen when that all works out. And just one last side note, you can say the 322nd day of the year all you want. I was born on March 22nd, 1988. I know all about numerology, and as a master builder myself, 322 doesn't scare me. So, Chiefs are winning by 1. I am not too sure where people like to write off the Chiefs. They have defied logic and gravity for a long time. I like to say that I have been very unbiased with my picks so far, but this is a game that I feel very strongly about, that given the right fortitude and given the right base and given the right mental communication firing off, the mindsets being aligned, the Chiefs got this. The Bills have a lot of powerful placements here, but we will definitely see. So I look forward to, proving people wrong. And I look forward to, sharing what my method can do. And if I'm wrong, I look forward to learning why I was. And if it was my bias being like, hey, the Chiefs can get through anything because they have so far this year, so be it. Either way, I'm looking forward to watching the game, enjoying it with the fam. So I'm going to head out of here. Thank you guys so much for being along for the ride, and I look forward to the next time I'm here. So until then, see you next week, and yes, go Chiefs.